Hello, and welcome to It's Already In You podcast. We are your hosts, Liz
and Janine, nutrition and movement experts, mothers and business owners, obsessed with helping you quiet the noise of diet culture.
Seeing through the false advertising and promises of our food and fitness industries, helping you discover that everything you need to upgrade your health and well-being is already in you.
So we're continuing our conversation on the food system, and in our last episode, Liz and I spoke about how it's affecting our health, whether it be from the lack of nutrients that we're getting or the excessive amounts of additives and chemicals and all of the things that are in our food system today. We're going to start talking about what is directly impacting our food system and how it's changed, right? So we spoke about the fact that we are now farm to factory, and industrialized farming is huge. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of dangers, and our organizations that are regulating, or their job is to regulate the food system at best.
Yes.
Like the World Health Organization, and I think I always come back to the fact when I'm educating people, like, all of you might not have known who was.
Yes.
We refer to the World Health Organization as WHO, or the Center for Disease Control, CDC, until before the pandemic, and now everybody knows.
Everyone knows, yes.
Who they are. So the World Health Organization has classified processed meats as a Group 1 carcinogen. The additives, the preservatives, and the flavors that are being added to meat are new. We did not do this 50 years ago, 75 years ago. Choline is in our meats that are processed, which is increasing heart disease, or shows to increase heart disease in the research that we're doing. Mass production of our meat, and they're fed monocropped grains, which contain genetically modified organisms, which we'll touch later on. But starting with the meat industry, Liz, what do you feel like is like the most red flag that you see, and what can we do when we go to the grocery store to try and avoid those meat products?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely can be overwhelming. One, for, and I feel like, honestly, this is a newer thing for me. I was born a vegetarian. My parents were vegetarians. I didn't eat meat until maybe like 5 years ago, my whole life. So like I was not very familiar with, honestly, the industry. And part of the reason was because, as I became an adult, it was very overwhelming because I knew it was like not great. And to learn, listen to my body. At the stage I was at, childbearing, all that stuff, I knew I needed protein, and I chose meat as something, and it felt good. With that being said, it was a big learning curve because my eyes hadn't been fully open to this industry, and to how meat is raised and how it lands on our shelves. And the biggest hurdle in this, and red flag for me as a consumer, is the difference in pricing. It is very challenging for somebody who might not have an abundant amount of money to buy grass-fed, organic, you responsibly raised meat. And I think that that's one of the biggest things, because it's like, for people realistically that don't have the money to spend for the amount of meat that they might want to eat or provide for their family, that's kind of like, I'm going to put my windshield wipers up because I need to give my kids chicken, or have a meat, but I can't afford to spend $35 on a steak. And so I think for the general person, that is like a red flag of like, why is there such a wide gap in the way animals are raised? Because there's very few that are raised in a way that like gets us the quality of meat that's best for our body. Yes. Why do we allow such a wider gap that's basically like cheap, harmful crap?
Right.
So I don't know if that answers your question, but that is like a red flag hurdle, is the difference in pricing, and how it makes it near impossible for some people to have
meat in their diet.
To have meat in their diet that's not going to actually harm them.
Yeah, so I can like give a different perspective on that, because I don't eat meat currently. I go back and forth in my diet over the years. There's times where I feel like my body's telling me that I might need it. And then this has probably been the longest stretch that I haven't consumed animal products. But I will say that I feel that a big red flag to me is that I think we've been so kind of pushed into believing that you can only get protein from animal products, from meat, from beef, chicken, right, pork, on and on. And I think that that is a huge misconception. So also, I believe that if you think about how much you really should be consuming versus how much we are consuming in America, you could save a ton of money, right? So if you buy 2 chicken breasts for a family of 4, you're going to be spending a lot less money.
Yes.
Probably the amount of money you would spend on the non-organic chicken breasts versus the chicken breasts that have been raised sustainably and consciously and, don't contain any additives that are going to be harmful to your health and your family's health. So, and this definitely will be something that we get into a little bit more, especially speaking to macros, because again, we've gone into this tunnel vision of we need this much carbohydrates, this much protein, this much fat, and not understanding truly what each of those things really means in a diet.
Yeah,
right?
What they actually do for our body.
Yes.
So that you can instinctively be like you said, there's times in your life where you're like connected and you know the purpose of protein. So you might have been like, my body's telling me it needs a little bit more support. So maybe I'm choosing to integrate some meat in or whatever it might be. Like you can sense in your body what it needs if you know what the nutrients do for you. When I think one thing that I think more people are connected to because it's so common, cold and flu season, when you get sick, you're like, oh, I need to have oranges and vitamin C and drink some soup, hydration, all of that type of stuff to help heal, feel better and stuff like that. And so that's like in everything. That's in everyday life, is to understand when we go through different stages, when our energy is low, when we're having digestive issues, when whatever, what foods do I need to support my body? Because nutrients is what heals us.
Yes.
So like to connect the two, and I think protein is definitely is there, but it has been over exaggerated, and it also directly relates to the supplement industry. Well, if you can't get enough protein from meat, then you need to buy this big jug, and if you want to build muscle or you have a good workout, you need this extra. And there is something to be said for protein growth and repair and all of that stuff, but it's not in the way that's communicated to us, which is, our body can't even metabolize a certain amount of protein. And so if you're like a weightlifter and you're like, I'm getting 70 grams of protein in, your body's not, it's not even doing what it needs to do. So like, again, the theme comes back to like education and individual awareness for what your body needs, but like be real with it.
When's the last time you ever heard, oh, they were hospitalized because they had a deficiency in protein?
Yes, yeah.
Or we hear all the time that, and dairy is next on our topics, but we hear all the time, there's high incidences of hip fractures, bone fractures in America because we have lack of calcium, but we eat more dairy than anywhere else in the world. We eat more cheese and, dairy products than anywhere in the world. So it's not a deficiency in dairy or in protein that we're having a problem with. What we are having a problem with in America is a deficiency in nutrients, is a deficiency in fiber, is a deficiency in those real nourishment foods that we're not getting enough of.
Yeah, foods and lifestyle too. I know we're talking about nutrition, but when you're saying like hip fractures and stuff, like to not look at like, are you getting vitamin D? Are you going outside? Are you walking? Are you strength training your body in a way for functional and mobility, not to like grind it out, but like all of those things you can't have this conversation and just have the simple solution of more protein or more supplement or more this, because it really, our bodies are simple but complex. Like, it needs multiple different things. And so I think that we get our blinders on sometimes and is like, oh, well, this is what I was told will make me. And we keep saying, of course you want to be healthy. Of course you want to feel safe in your body.
Yes.
Of course you want to do the things that you feel are going to make you your best self. But just taking a step back and, not to sound rude, but like common sense, like, does this make sense? Like, no, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like,
and try it again.
Think it through.
Yeah, think it through, and think about all the information that is coming at us, right?
Yeah.
And that it causes confusion. And try to remember to come back to those basic instincts.
Yeah.
And
this is like a great example of just how ultimately a lot of the things that we're saying are just tried and true. 200 years ago, 100 years ago, today. The nutrients that you need for your body. Obviously, there are some that have to uptick because our environment has impacted our health. So we need to be more mindful of things that we are just like magnesium and things that are just naturally, environmentally kind of taking from us. So when the trends, like you get all of this information, and like we said in the past episode, you can be really confused or you can be overwhelmed. And of course you are, because we are now told you need protein. I hear protein all the time for menopause women, for bone health as you age, for muscle strength and, definition and the outer look for strength. But like a handful of years ago, it was like too much meat is bad, meatless Mondays, take away meat, and so it's really not the thing. It's really not the meat that is actually the problem in terms of like the lack of health. It's how it's raised. It's the quality. It's how it shows up. So whether
how much.
And it's how much. So whether you at home enjoy your body, like responds and loves meat, or it doesn't, one, we want you to know you can get protein multiple different ways. Mm-hmm. Two, you don't need as much as you are told you need. And three, ultimately, it's the quality that's going to matter. So instead of like focusing on how much or how little or counting or grams or this or that, just focus on getting good quality, all macronutrients, but we're talking about protein right now, but good quality.
Yep.
Because there's going to be trends all the time that come in and out.
But I think the trend of macronutrients, and this may be a strong opinion of mine, is that because we're so focused on macronutrients that we don't give nutrients, micronutrients, the validity that they deserve.
Yeah.
And we're so focused on that. Like, how many clients do you have come to you that I eat too many carbs?
Yeah.
Do you even know what that means?
Do you even know what that means? And what carbs do for your body, and what awareness that like what does that mean? And for like the person at home, let's just not assume that people know what is the difference between a macronutrient and a micronutrient.
Yes, so macros are energy sources, right? They're either carbohydrates, fats, proteins, even lactic acid can be considered a macronutrient. And our micronutrients are our vitamins and minerals, all of the things that are under those two.
All of them are necessary. What you'll hear most about is the macronutrients.
Yes.
You need protein, you need fat, healthy fats.
Which is because of the food, the 4 food groups and the food pyramid and all of those things. That's why we talk about macronutrients and we leave out micronutrients.
Which are so important and just come along with fruits and vegetables and like a variety of whole, real foods.
Yes. And we definitely need a whole episode on that.
And are essentially not even in processed foods. Like the micronutrients aren't even like.
And if they are, they're probably just cooked out or processed out eventually, right?
Yeah.
Which results in a food product. But and again, to go back to the heavy stuff, we're speaking about modern farming, and now we went from meats to now we're going to discuss a little bit on what's going on in dairy. And we're not here to scare or put fear in you about what's happening in the food system. We're here to give you the education and the tools to make really good decisions, the best ones that you can make with the information that we give you. So we just don't want anyone to ever think that, we're hearing this and it's just to make us fear these things that are going on. These things are real and they're really happening, and we need to be our own advocate and make the best decisions we can make with the resources and sources that we have.
Sure.
But dairy cows, they used to be pasture raised, and they would graze on grass, and it was clean grass.
Yeah.
Clean. In using it as kind of a play on clean food, right?
Yes.
And they were farmed without synthetic chemicals and hormones. And now, and we used to not even pasteurize our dairy. So like so much stuff has changed. Now, ultra pasteurized and high heats. And our food system and our organizations that are looking down at regulations of these foods are actually more concerned with pasteurization and ultra pasteurized products than they are with like what is in these products.
Yeah.
So it's kind of crazy when you think about that. Grass-fed dairy includes many more beneficial compounds, including anti-inflammatory, omega-3 fatty acids, and antioxidants. I think maybe, Liz, you want to touch on that a little bit, the omega-3s and how important that is? No?
I think you are a little bit better on that.
Okay.
Dairy, because I don't do dairy in my personal life, my kids are lactose intolerant. I feel like dairy.
I don't do dairy either.
Yes.
But we can.
Yes.
Yeah.
Break that down a little bit.
We can break that down.
Yes.
All right, we're going to come back to the omega-3s because that is part of other conversations like our fishes have omega-3s and those versus the omega-6s that we don't want a lot in our diet, and the combination of those two. But we'll come back to that.
What I do want to say, which I just thought that was like really interesting, like what you said about grass-fed dairy, it is an anti-inflammatory, like a number of different like positive impacts on our body when you are not eating the grass-fed or you're eating the like hormone-driven factory-made dairy. It's the flip side. So you're going to create inflammation.
Yes.
And that's kind of a theme with food. If you're looking at the two to kind of help organize it in your head, like this is like high quality, real food my body's going to understand. These are the positives. So if you're finding something straight across the line, like a dairy or a meat product, the benefits that you're going to get from the higher quality choice, you're going to most likely get the negative, the flip side from the lower quality factory raised. So definitely with dairy, I feel like one thing with clients, one thing for myself that I don't do dairy and my youngest son is because of the inflammation that our bodies are really sensitive to. And I can see that in symptoms in the way that we feel. Even with the higher quality dairy, it still can cause like that reaction.
Yes.
But for the average Joe, I feel like it does for everybody, the poor quality.
I personally, and this is a set aside from, the factual science-backed information that we're giving you. My personal belief is that I don't necessarily believe that we're supposed to consume dairy.
Yeah.
And that's, again, I'm going on a sidebar here just because I've seen the symptoms and the issues that it can cause in a lot of people, and there is a lot of inflammation. And like you said, there is a lot too about nutrition and understanding, like even the studies that have been conducted, like do we know were they using quality dairy or quality meats or quality products when they did the study, or were they not? And is the outcome of the study have to do with the quality, or is it based on the fact that we're just not meant to have this from the beginning, right? Yeah. I do believe that cows make dairy for their baby cows, just like we make our milk for our babies.
Yeah.
My youngest child has a dairy issue. So I've done a lot of research on dairy, and that's what
that makes sense
my
to me.
conclusion is. However, I do believe that there are a lot of philosophies out there that a quality dairy does play a part in good nutrition. Mm-hmm. And if you believe that, I think it's important to make that choice of a better than dairy product.
Absolutely. Yes.
Sex hormones are now used to make artificial insemination more successful. So we're again, it's always about bigger, better, more, faster, how to get there quicker in our food system now. Antibiotics are used to lower the risk of infections in these animals so that they can keep producing and keep using them. There's a growth hormone, which all of you have seen on your milk. It will say produced without RBST. This is to increase milk production. It came on the market around 1994. It is associated with breast, prostate, and colon cancer. And when you look at the rise in those types of cancers, it's almost linear to when this hormone came out in the dairy process.
Wow. That's scary.
Yes. So when we speak to meat and dairy and processed foods, and we're going to get more into what is going on in our food system, I want to just stop and talk about the SAD diet for a second, which is the standard American diet, because we're speaking to all these things that are causing health issues and issues in our well-being. And in the SAD diet, it is made up mostly of these disease-causing foods. So it's really important to touch on this before we go into more of the issues with America's food system. But basically around 50 to 60% of American diets are processed foods. About 40% to 50% are animal products. And less than 10% is fruits and vegetables.
It's crazy.
It's crazy,
Yeah.
right? So when you think about 40% of your calories is coming from animal products, and over 50% of your calories is coming from processed and ultra-processed foods.
Yeah.
That have their own acronym now, UPF.
Yeah. Yes.
Right? Like now we're speaking to that like in a way that, people need to pay attention to, is something and then the difference between like, when we say, well, when you're in a pinch and you need to have something like, there is a difference now. Do we do processed or is this ultra processed?
Yeah.
Right.
Definitely.
And making that decision is important.
Yeah.
Right. When we look over the change in the past 100 years of our food system, I just want to point out that in 1900, Americans got about 5 pounds of sugar a year. Do you want to guess how much in 2000? How many pounds of sugar we take in a year?
Hundreds.
It's 170 pounds a year.
Yeah.
In the 1900s, 0 soft drinks were consumed. In the year 2000, 53 gallons per year of soft drinks. In the 1900s, we used around 4 pounds of oil. And in the year 2000, we used about 74 pounds of oil. And now we're in 2024. So this is now, this could be even higher.
Yeah.
So just like put that into perspective. Cheese, we consumed about 2 pounds a year. And in the year 2000, over 30 pounds of cheese was consumed a year.
That's crazy.
Meat went from about 140 pounds to 200 pounds. So not a huge significant difference, but still a significant
And when combined
difference.
with all of the other things,
Yes.
that's part of the awareness. It's not just the one thing, it's the combination of everything.
Yes, and this one gets me. So in 1900, we grew about 130 to 140 pounds a year of homegrown produce. And in the year 2000, we grew 11 pounds.
Oh, so things are shooting up and things are dying down. Yeah.
And so then that just shows you, right, that there's like that significant change and difference in the way that we're eating and the way that we're consuming food, and just how sad it is that homegrown produce that is really important. Of course, our convenience and our lifestyles are changing, but we should still be expected, or at least expect for ourselves to be able to find something as close to that as we can in this convenient world that we live in, right?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, talking about the SAD diet, the American diet. When you look at the big picture, like when you really look at the big picture, we are taught that from a very young age. And it's, the food pyramid that I can remember in school with all the grains and the meat as the priority. And as you go up, this is not a one stop issue. This is multifaceted from our medical system, to our educational system, to our farming system. Because the fact of the matter is, and it's so devastating, really, is that because we are moving further and further away from this, because it is essentially near impossible for farmers to run farms and raise animals in a respect the animals in a responsible way, and fruits and vegetables, and really have them make money and not go into debt and have to close down with environmental issues and droughts and stuff like that. More and more farmers aren't able to do that. So we are, because of this push out and build up of this false industry, of this, harmful disease-fueled industry, we are, again, giving very limited choices. Like, we have to almost search. And so to understand the big picture, that it's just not something you decide as a child, as an adult, or you can't just easily go out and be like, oh, I can get this type of meat or this type of fruits and vegetables or this type of dairy easily. It is harder than it should be, 100%.
Yes.
And in certain parts of this country, even that much harder, because just kind of a big business, let's call the processed food industry as big business, has essentially pushed out the little guy, which is whole, real foods, farmers, sources for that. And so now we're in this predicament in 2024 where we're like, okay, maybe some lights are coming on. Maybe we're seeing these trends. Maybe we're starting to be alarmed and things need to change. So what am I going to do? What are some things that I can do to make sure I am getting these foods that are best for me, that aren't going to drain my bank account entirely?
Yep.
It's hard. And so
hard.
a quick stop in the education of the system, but in terms of some actions that people can do, what would you say? If I'm looking for fruits, vegetables, meats that are high quality, where do I realistically go that's not gonna be levels of research and work and money? Where would I start?
So number one, and I think this is across the board, whether we're talking about meat or fruits and vegetables or any quality food products, I think we need to remember, I should say not products, foods. We need to remember that we are eating way too much. We eat way too much as a society. We don't need the amount of food that we're consuming. So when you start to peel those layers back a little bit and you start to eat less of those things, and you fill your plate with more nutrient-dense foods like greens and grains and and the foods that are going to give you the more nutrient-packed meals, you're going to see a little bit of shift in how much money you're spending, right? Also, think about processed food is expensive. If you shop in the middle of the store, if you're buying frozen food, frozen meals, bagged, boxed things, you're spending a lot of money. So if you limit those things, you're going to spend less, right?
Yeah.
But to answer your question specifically of where you go, so I think if the two of us said how we food shop, it would be a little overwhelming to some people, right? But I do think that finding your local markets, seeking out your CSAs, seeing what, when you said if you're a family that wants quality meat and you eat meat and you like meat in your life, then look for a farm that may do a cow share or some type of food share, a CSA for fish, whether it be meat or fish or dairy or any of those things. You can find farmers that have the ability to go direct to them. And when you're buying farm direct, a lot of times that ends up being less expensive. Go into your farmers markets. Trader Joe's is as much as it is, a business, and it's and there's the positive and negatives of it. They tend to be really, really inexpensive across the board when you're looking at comparisons. And I think that should probably be a topic of ours. We could go shopping at many different stores and, compare how much things cost at each store. Sometimes you have to do things like buy bulk if you have a big family in order to bring the prices down. And there's a lot of things online now like Thrive Market and If you have a membership to them, the prices are coming down a
Sure.
little bit. So there are tips and tricks to that.
Yeah. Get a little crafty.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that like for me, what I do a lot, especially with the meats for my family, is I just shop the sales. Like I'll at Whole Foods, I know that there's certain, standard that I'm looking for. And so I don't go in with like, I need a steak or chicken. I look to see like what's on sale that week. And then, which is kind of a cool way to also cook, because then I can get creative, maybe try something new, and then think what I'm going to build around that, or what, they'll build around that. And so there is, with all like us, continually say it can be challenging, there is also many, many ways. You just have to think outside what your box is now. And to your point of, we are eating too much. And I don't think Janine said that in a way of like, you need to like eat less calorie. You need to deprive. Like the quantity of our food we're eating, and one of the reasons we're eating so much mass of food is because it's so, it has such a lack of nutrients that our bodies don't have hunger cues. They're not being, filled up and saying, I'm satisfied, I don't need to eat anymore. So our bodies are constantly searching for food. So even though we are, eating more foods, that doesn't equate to anything more in our health. In fact, it's like the complete opposite. And we know more food at this point of time doesn't always equal that means you're more weight or less weight or whatever. It really just means that we're not giving our body what it needs. So it just keeps like, it's like an endless pit.
Right. And when you're looking at portions and, you have to think like we spoke about a while back was crowding out the plate. And you could have a full plate of nutrient-dense foods, or you could have a full plate of calorically dense foods, right? Like, so if you're eating more of the nutrient-dense foods and less of the calorically dense foods, you're going to have a more nourishment or nutrient-dense filled meal. And I think that's more where I was going with that. But yes, saying that our portions are definitely bigger than they were. And understanding that if you're getting nutrients, your body's going to be satisfied, versus if you're not, your body's going to keep asking for you to eat more, right? If you have high fiber foods in your diet, you're going to tend to eat less because you're going to get fuller faster and more satisfied quicker. Yeah.
I think we need a third episode because we can't get into like GMOs and all that stuff in this.
Yeah, and we have the UPF and the ultra-processed food and the processed food additives and preservatives and all of the things that are going into our foods, and we want to definitely enlighten you on what's going on there. So we will continue this.
Yes, keep communicating with us, you guys. It's already a new podcast on IG, and it's already a new podcast at Gmail. Let us know what you want to hear and any feedback you have.